Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sharpest Call of Duty League podcast. My name is Robert, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, CDLMetrics. Major 4. You excited here for the last major of the season?
Yeah, very excited. Crazy that we're already here. Yeah, it's June. It's almost July at this point. It feels like the season has flown by. An interesting bracket to go into this weekend. I think maybe the least chalky that we've had so far this year. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it looks a little weird compared to maybe what we thought it might look like a few weeks ago. Excited to go through the bracket. The race for champs isn't much of a race this year, but there are still some implications for seeding and things like that as we head into champs in just a few weeks. Excited to talk through all of that stuff and go through some kind of season-long stuff that we've been tracking as well. That'll be a jam-packed episode, but yeah, super looking forward to this weekend for sure.
Yeah, we'll talk a bit on the champs race here in a second. Model Warfare, here's our recap for last week. Somehow, Koi was the only one that I hit, plus 240 versus Texas, the plus 1.5, which actually was not a bad, that was actually a plus 240, so that was actually a pretty good hit. Yeah, I guess this was what I even said to them. They could just get swept 3-0, and they did. No idea what this Vegas team is, but yet somehow they turned it around and beat G2 3-2. So, whatever. I have no idea what that Riyadh team is. Boston versus Paris. Boston plus 1.5. Yeah, that didn't cash. They did get it to a map 4, if I remember correctly. I think they had the lead down the stretch, but they coughed it up. So yeah, unfortunately though. That being said, you went in with double barrel Cloud9 and cashed both. Both of those cashed.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about that?
Yeah, happy to see them force the map 4 in both of those series. And I also mentioned it last week where it's like if you wanted to play just the map 2s in both of those series at higher prices, you could do that. And that's how they got it done in both of those series. Their Search and Destroy looked, very good last week, which is a surprise because they're not a great team at anything. But Search is just one of those game modes where they can get a win now and then. Miami, a team that I didn't think much of, even though they had beaten Vegas the week prior. Like, Miami is a fine team, but a team that could definitely lose to Cloud9 in a Search. And then the Thieves one, again, it's more of just, I know Thieves' Search is unbelievable right now, but the price is out of control. And yeah, Cloud9 were able to take advantage in that series as well. The Ravens pick, not very good. They played that last series on Sunday, got swept by Vegas. So a great week for Vegas, to say the least, beating Falcons and Ravens 3-0s for both. So they're coming into the major very hot. A bit of a tough team to pin down and understand where they're at in the hierarchy of things. But yeah, good weeks for both of us considering yet you had that plus 240. And honestly, Toronto almost won that series. Yeah, a lot of, honestly, craziness going into the last major of the year, and I am here for it because I love chaos.
Yes, agreed. Combined model plays, not the greatest week for those. Again, weirdness there with Riyadh and Boston. Cloud9 didn't get the money line, but they got the plus 2.5. Toronto didn't get the money line, but they got the plus 2.5. Didn't get the map 2. But here on Sunday against, who they play?
Minnesota.
Minnesota. They got the win and the plus 1.5. So that's not bad there. Points contest update. So you have opened up about 40-point lead here in the points. That's because Toronto has faltered now a little bit, and Minnesota also faltered a little bit. They had a really good major 3, but they didn't have as great as a minor, so they fell off a little bit. That being said, it is still very competitive. If any of these make a run in this major, looking at you, Minnesota here, this team starts off in the losers bracket. They're not in the losers. A lot of these teams are basically losers bracket teams, are very likely to end up in losers bracket. And now Toronto is as well too. But it's really going to come down to this. This is the final weekend for this. Let's see if you can make it 2 straight years in a row here. Yeah, you won last year, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you did. Yes.
Yeah, just barely, but yeah, no, it will probably be very close. It probably, honestly, a lot will come down to Minnesota versus Riyadh in that first winners bracket game at 6 a.m. my time this Friday. That is just a crazy start time, but it's in Europe, so I understand it. But yeah, that one match will do a lot for one of us. Either you'll tighten that 40-point gap to basically nothing, or Falcons can maybe extend it for me. Yeah, no, it was a surprisingly good run for a lot of the teams I had at the bottom. Boston went 3-2. That was not really expected. Ravens 2-3, which I think is expected, but it gets them a winner's bracket start. They're the 8 seed, so good luck with that. But still, they've got a shot, and they are kind of that one team that could make it into champs right now that isn't in as of now, or they're the only team that's left basically. So they're gonna have to go really hot, maybe win the major, maybe make the final in order to get there. But we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, points contest should be very close down to the wire, and I love it. That's how it should be every year. So hopefully we can keep that up for next year.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep it up for next year. I think that would be it'll be fun for next year. I think definitely my strategy will probably hopefully change, and we'll go from there. But yeah, it should be interesting next year. League news. So these were the matches we talked about last week. Again, a lot more of these hitting game 4. Only 3 hit the game 5, but that's better than we've had some weeks here. Some sweeps and random sweeps too. This one shouldn't have been a sweep. This one, yeah, that makes sense. And this one, I guess that kind of makes sense. And this one is a weird sweep that shouldn't have happened at all, but whatever.
Yeah.
There's so much weirdness this year, so much up and down weirdness that it's really hard to figure out what the heck is happening on any given week. So it's up and down, but yeah, well, let's get. Do you have anything else you want to mention about these results for the weekend?
Yeah, no. So next go around, when we do the champs preview in a few weeks, I'll do a whole breakdown of what percentage of matches this year ended in a sweep versus 4 maps versus 5 maps. I'm very intrigued to see how that actually shook out, because when we reviewed that, I think back in January or February, yeah, this season up to that point was super, super sweep happy. It feels like that's curbed a little bit lately. We've gotten to more map 4s and map 5s. But yeah, interested to see how that data looks after we get these matches from Major 4 in the books, and we can kind of look at the season as a whole. Excited to look through that. As far as matches last week that kind of caught my eye, obviously the Toronto-Minnesota one on Sunday was nuts. The fact that Minnesota blew the map 3 after looking so good in map 1 and map 2, and that just left the door open for Toronto. They squeaked by in the map 4, squeaked by in round 11. Yeah, craziness in that series there. Surge sweeping Heretics, not on my bingo card, but again, Heretics are that sort of team where they can look really good against a great team and then the next day kind of flop. So part of the reason why we didn't really want to pick that series was because both Vancouver and Miami, in our opinions, are just way too hot and cold to sort of get a good read on them. And then the Riyadh Minnesota series also caught my eye. Poor Minnesota, right? You get to 2 map 5s and can't come through in either of them. Looked a lot better in that series versus Falcons. That was a straight up coin flip in the market. Both teams were minus 120. And after that series, I think everyone was, yep, those teams feel very even to me. If you played that series out 100 times, Riyadh probably win 50, Minnesota probably win 50. So that one went to Falcons that day, and the fun part is we get to see that match again just a few days from now. Yeah, that should be a great way to kick off the Paris Major, and yeah, I'm excited to get into the bracket here.
Yeah, I agree on that. So here are the preseason win totals. This is where they're at right now, right? Oh, this is the final, right? Because it's done now.
We're
right?
done. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Optic just barely went under that season win total. Thieves went under it as well. Gentlemates went under it. FaZe just barely over it. Toronto under. Minnesota barely over. Oh, sorry. Miami just over. Cloud9 way under. And that one, I think we had looked at that one, and we didn't like that one. That seems a bit high. Boston did go over. Falcons and Ravens both massively went over theirs, and Surge actually went over theirs too. So more overs than unders, actually, I think, generally. But again, a lot of that is caused by just Cloud9 just getting completely destroyed here. That's a lot of free wins, especially to the upper part here. But even then, the top 2, it's important to note for next year, right? If we see a line like this next year and there's something like that, it's important to note. Yeah, any other notes here from the win totals for you?
Yeah, so one thing, when we brought this up in our very first podcast of the season, I was so happy that we had win totals to begin with because I think it is interesting to talk about how we view these teams in the long term, right? Like how many wins do we expect these teams to get in these qualifier matches? We have the full schedule for all these teams. They schedule it out all the way to June, and we can kind of go through and see, okay, if Optic are going to go over 22 and a half, that means they have to go 23 and 5 on the season in order to hit their over. And I was doing the math on, okay, let's look at CDL seasons from a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. How many, the best teams in the league, what were they winning their qualifiers at? And for Optic or Thieves, they both have that 22 and a half number. They would have needed to win 83% of their qualifiers. And consistently year over year, the best teams in the league were hitting in the upper 70s to 80-ish% of their all of their matches. I wasn't looking just at qualifier wins, but in the entirety of their schedule. And it's a really tall ask, I think, if the number gets to that point where you really can't have a cold stretch of the season or you just can't go over. And for Thieves, that was pretty early in the year, right? They made that lineup move. And honestly, now they're considered maybe the best team in the game. But because they went through that slow stretch early, they went way under their total. It was impossible for them to get their over. They went 5-0 in the Major Four qualifiers, and they were still, 4 games short of hitting that number. So it's just, we got to set our expectations, I think, fairly. And I just think the market gets a little too aggressive on these really good teams. On the flip side, like these teams near the bottom where we're not asking much of them, yes, maybe their lineup doesn't look great in December, but knowing that they can churn roster spots and improve their lineup over time, or honestly, maybe there's a team that is projected to be a little better than them that falls flat, cough Cloud9, right? Cloud9 almost didn't win any games this year, and if that's the case, all these other teams around them are going to be able to pick up wins on them. But it's not just that. Like Falcons and Ravens, I think clearly played above their expectation. I give a lot of credit to Falcons. They almost doubled their win total. They stuck with their lineup throughout the entire season. Cloud9 bailed on their lineup after a couple months, and look where it got them. I think there is a lot to take away in this, and I just think it's important to note in December that a lot of these teams, if not all these teams, might look a lot different a month into the season, let alone 6 months into the season. If you want to flip to the next slide, it kind of does the same thing as this, but walks you through how the teams got there through the qualifier period. So you can see how close each team was to getting their over or hitting their under or whatever. And each sort of section of the team's bar is the win total that they achieved during that specific qualifier period. So the bottom chunk is Major 1 qualifiers, then Major 2, 3, 4. And yeah, like you can see Optic just barely missed, right? They had 22 and a half was their win total to start. They got to 22, which is still amazing. Like the fact that they went 22 and 6 is quite impressive. And I want to point out their early season. So that bottom bar, they had 4 wins in the Major 1 qualifiers. They went 4 and 3, which I think most people would say that's a bit of a disappointment considering what we were expecting of Optic to start the year. But still, 4 and 3, like you're on track to have a good season, or we still think of you as a good team. Major 2 qualifiers come around, they go 10 and 1, and we're like, okay, yeah, maybe they will hit their over because they're 14 and 4 at that point. But I just want to point out that 14 and 4 at that point was still not on pace to get that 83% win rate. Like, as good as that sounds, it's still not enough. But they were really proving us wrong for a while and then just barely came up short in those matches a week ago now that went to those map 5s. So that ultimately was a difference. They had to go 4 and 1 or better and finish this qualifier 3 and 2. Thieves I touched on already. They hit that lull in the Major 2 qualifiers and they just could not recover from that. Paris, right? This team that was viewed very highly by a lot. We both picked them in the CDL points contest thinking, oh, this is a good value for how much they cost. And after the first couple months of the season, it was like, hey, this could be a really good play. They came out, they were the 1 seed at Major 1. one major one, just barely, but they had the 1 seed. They got the win at the major. And then I don't know what happened. They just kind of crashed out. And because of that slow stretch, fell way short of their number. Now they're a different team today than they were a month ago. But yeah, under their number, Vegas was priced about right. But you can see a lot of these teams at the bottom, Ravens, Falcons, hit their win total during the major two qualifiers, which were in like February and March. Oh, again, a lot of that is just beating up on Cloud9, but a lot of that too is being able to compete with the Miamis and the Minnesotas and the Torontos of the world that were viewed as like a clear step above those teams, but I think at the end of the day are right in the mix with them. Yeah, interested to see if we get win totals for next season, how much do they adjust those top end teams and bring them down? Obviously, a lot depends on what the rosters look like and how people view the league going into next year. But at least for this season, it does look like those top end teams were just overpriced just a little bit. So, yeah, curious to see how that shakes out next year.
Mm-hmm. That will be interesting for next year as well, which will basically, once this year is done and once Champs is done, and then once the Esports World Cup is done, then we'll get some more information on that. Here is the champ standings, and as you alluded to earlier, not very competitive here. It was funny. I was remembering years ago, I remember the first couple of years, we used to be like trying to figure out when a team was eliminated from champs, and we just didn't care for Cloud9. Maybe someone noted it, I don't know, but there's like, okay, they're like 99% eliminated, and when they finally cross over to the 100% eliminated, I don't know. Fairly sure all these teams are eliminated with the exception of maybe Carolina, but this is now the situation where it's okay. Miami would have to lose round one, and Carolina would have to win. It's like
Yeah.
I think basically,
Yeah.
What's a win of what's a major win? What is it,
So a
like
win is
90 points?
100. So 100 would do it. You'd get to 250. You'd actually pass Falcons, but Falcons or Minnesota will be racking up more points because they play each other in winners round one. So yeah, if you're Ravens, the easiest path is to win and have Miami get bounced immediately, that's extremely unlikely to happen. But Miami could certainly lose their opening round game. Can Ravens win? That's going to be really tough, but they're in the winners bracket, so there is a way to get it done. They could also get second place. Second place gets you 75 points, and right now they're down 70 to Miami. So that could happen. Again, you need Miami to crash out immediately, or you're still toast. Right? I guess Minnesota would maybe become the team that if they lose to Falcons and then lose again, there's a path there. But yeah, if you're Ravens, it's got to be a first or second place finish here. Anything short is not enough. I believe third place is 60 points, so that would get you to 210, but that's still short. But yeah, that's where we're at now. It's been maybe the worst race for champs in terms of the cutoff line in quite some time. I feel like the last few years we've had some good luck with, oh yeah, there is real movement that could happen between the 10, 9, 8, 7 seed going into Major 4, and this year it really isn't that. So maybe Ravens can shock the world and go on a huge run, but it all might be for nothing if Minnesota and Miami get some wins this weekend as well. Yeah, a bummer. I guess we still have some seeding to figure out. The 5 through 8 seeds are all pretty close, and Toronto is also starting in the losers bracket. So yeah, some opportunities for Falcons and Minnesota to move up that seed list. The top is pretty well structured, but those great teams could make huge runs, and if one of those other elite teams crashes out, you could definitely see a flip, maybe for second and third or third and fourth. But yeah, I think we're pretty locked in at this point, which is a bummer, but it's been still a fun season to follow, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's to get second, even if you get to Sunday, it's not enough, right? And that's assuming that Miami and Minnesota would both lose out. It's a
Yeah.
tough. If they start winning any games, and that gets even harder. And it's okay, you have to get second, or you have to start winning at a certain point, right? So yeah, I think. And again, this isn't the Ravens have been amazing this stage, and then they're the number one seed. They just got swept by a team that they would definitely need to beat to get to the finals, probably, right? So yeah, not been a great, I think. But the thing is, that being said, though, I want to say these 8 teams, obviously there's been a bit of differentiation here in the top I think basically 3. But from 4 to 8, I think they've basically been the same team. They basically all of them have probably beat each other, I think, several times. There's not a lot of differentiation between those teams. Obviously, Paris is up there at 320% that they won the one major. But other than that, I kind of think those 4 through 8 are functioning the same team. There's been some very clear breaks here where it's like these are the top two, then you've got FaZe, then you've got Paris, and then you've got these 4 here, which are functioning the same team. And that's exactly what the point standings say. So it's funny how it works out. But anyways, moving on. This is the bracket. We'll go through the matchups here. But yeah, as we mentioned before, Miami, Cloud9, Toronto, and Vancouver staying in the losers bracket there. Match previews. So first match up, again, as we mentioned before, we get a rematch of Minnesota versus Riyadh. Riyadh -125 in the money line, -1.5 +175, -120 in the hard point each way. Minnesota is a -125 favorite in the search, and Riyadh is -163 in the overload. And yeah, my model is basically unmoved from the last time we ran this. I have it 50-50. I wanted to take, I think I took, who did I take? I took Riyadh.
In their game against Vegas, you took Riyadh.
Yes,
but I think
sorry.
we both had the same opinion of, yeah, it feels like a coin flip. I don't know.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it's weird that Riyadh versus FaZe is a coin flip, but then Riyadh versus G2 is also a coin flip. Take of that what you will. That group of teams and against the third team is a coin flip, but that group of teams versus another group of that part of that group of teams is also a coin flip. So take from that what you will. Yeah, I got nothing on this one. This game I think is going to be at 6 a.m. Eastern or 8 a.m. Eastern or something absurd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enjoy this. Yeah. I have no desire to bet on this at all.
Yeah, I do think it is probably the most intriguing round one game of all 4.
Yes.
And the interesting thing, again, is because we're doing this in a 3-day period, right? We're going Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday, we're going to have an alpha stream and a Bravo stream because we've got to get through all of winners round 1, all of losers round 1, and then they do that one extra losers round 2 match so that by the time we get to Saturday, we're all caught up to where we're normally at. But yeah, this is 8 a.m. your time, 6 a.m. for me. So I don't know if I'm going to be up for this, but if I do happen to get up early, I will turn it on just to see what happens. But yeah, I don't know. My opinion of this match hasn't changed much from a week ago. At that time, it was about a 50-50. It still is a 50-50. Last week's match, I think, proved it, right? Both teams split the hard points very evenly. A decisive map 1 win for Falcons, a decisive map 4 win for G. The searches were pretty split, dead even. Minnesota gets map 2, 6-3. Falcons come back in map 5, take the series 6-4. And then, the difference is overload, which was a 1-point result for Falcons, which we both like Falcons in the map 3. We're both kind of pointing in that direction again, about 60-40, maybe map 3. I am curious to see if the vetoes for map 3 are different because I do think it makes sense that Falcons took the map 3, took the series. They played Exposure, which, as we know, is one of Falcons' 2 very good overload maps, that and Scar. Minnesota also good at Exposure, but haven't played it a ton. I wonder if they go, we'll try something else, veto that, and maybe square up on a Den or a Gridlock, which we've seen from Minnesota, it's been good. We've seen from Falcons, it hasn't. So maybe that's the difference in this series for Minnesota is if we're splitting hard points and splitting searches, how do we pick up the map 3? I think you got to change up your vetoes. And I think they maybe would be favored if it is going to be a Gridlock in map 3. So it's a lot of unknowns. Maybe they run back the same map set, we get the same result. Maybe it's the same map set, we get a different result. It's as close to a true coin flip match as I can remember. And we've done this for a while and we've talked through a lot of close matches. But yeah, these two teams are both playing pretty well right now. I know Minnesota completely folded against Toronto in that reverse sweep. But again, both of these teams playing pretty well as of late. Minnesota was in a rut and have gotten out of that, I think, pretty safely. And Falcons are just, since the Major 3 qualifiers, have really kicked it up a notch. So, yeah, excited to watch it if I wake up in time. But yeah, I think both of these teams could really go on a run at this major and make things interesting.
This one will be interesting. I'd love to see it. No idea what the outcome's going to be, but it would be interesting to watch this for sure. Winners bracket: Boston versus Optic. Optic minus 2,500 on the money line. Optic minus 2.5, minus 120. Optic minus 700 in the hard point, minus 400 in search, and minus 450 in the overload. Here's the thing: my model shows a little bit of less value on the Boston plus 2.5. It kind of likes Boston in the hard point and in the search. Sorry, it doesn't like it in the hard point. Maybe a little lower in the overload. But honestly, I'm still going with Boston here. I don't care. This is now, in my opinion, clearly the Optic starts randomly taking people to 5 games part of the year. And that happens every year for some reason. So I'm just now, I don't, the thing is, again, we don't need that. We just need one. Like, literally, Boston wins any of these maps. It's fine. I still think Optic doesn't care the most about an opening round match. I think they want to get their whole thing is they are having issues winning the tournaments rather than coming second, right? So I still think they're maybe going to try to expand their map pool a bit. I don't think they're going to care that much. I think definitely could lose a map here. I don't want to try the money line. I think I've got the money line priced roughly correctly. But if I'm doing anything, I'm going to take a shot on the Boston plus 2.5 here. It's probably one of the only plays I have on the board as it currently sits. What about you here?
Yeah, my model is definitely pointing me in the Boston direction, and I don't necessarily disagree, right? Optics play as of late has been less so than what we're used to, but again, what we've been used to for the entire season basically is that they are the best team in the game. Maybe they're not quite anymore. Maybe Thieves have taken that from them, but I still think their underlying numbers are great. Their map pool is super, super deep. I don't want to worry too much about Optic in those Map 5 series. I think, honestly, it's a testament to how good they've been all year that we're like nitpicking them for going to a Map 5 versus Minnesota and falling short, or going to a Map 5 versus Ravens, who is, they're a worse team, but are a team capable of getting to a Map 5 at some point, and Ravens got it done. So Optic tripping up, it's a little weird. The Ravens series, I know, was 2 round 11s that didn't go their way. In that Toronto series, it was a bit more surprising. They won that one, but the hard points both went to Toronto, and we had watched Toronto play for a couple weeks with that new lineup, and it did not look good. So that series is a little concerning. Boston making winners bracket is notable just because we viewed this team as one of the worst teams all year. But I don't want to look too much into that either. Their schedule for the Major Four qualifiers was very nice. And yeah, they started with Vancouver and New York. Also, 2 horrible teams. They were able to win both of those. And then they got that win over a reeling Toronto team a week ago to get that 3rd win, secure their winners bracket spot. Congratulations, you get Optic Texas. So I don't know. Like, I just don't really want to be on the Boston side of things, even though my model is pointing me in that direction. I don't think minus 120 is a crazy price to pay. I do wonder where it's going to come from, because I think Optic is still an elite hardpoint team despite what we saw against Toronto last week. I think Optic is clearly a cut above in Search and Destroy. I just think a lot of round 11s lately haven't been going their way. Boston have improved that game mode slightly, but I still don't trust them that much. And then Overload is like, yeah, I think it's Optic for sure in that one. Map pool super deep. They could play whatever they want. So, yeah, I get what you're saying about the round 1. Is Optic going to be there for it? This opponent might be viewed as an easy win, and maybe they get tripped up because of that, or because they do something weird with the map pool. But man, I just think we could be here at 8:30 a.m. on Friday thinking, oh yeah, Optic smash Boston, duh. It's Optic versus Boston on LAN. These teams are just so different from each other. So the price is there. I'm not really interested in for this match, but I'd like to see Optic come out and crush Boston, because I think it will make for a more interesting major if Optic are up to their standard, which I think they very well could be, but we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we hope for Optic to be at their best, but again, it's just that match against Toronto should be a little concerning. Toronto doesn't seem to be particularly good right now, and they almost beat Optics. So that's a little concerning to me. Third match that we have at least, Carolina versus Thieves. Thieves minus 1600 on the money line. Thieves minus 2.5 plus 100. Thieves minus 450 in the hard point, minus 334 in the search, and minus 600 in the overload. Yeah, my model weirdly likes Thieves minus 2.5 here. I'm not completely sure why. Ravens did just get swept by FaZe. Thieves haven't looked amazingly dominant either, but my modeling's just kind of picking up on Carolina not being that great. So if I'm playing anything here, it's going to be Thieves minus 2.5. I don't think I'm going to have many plays specifically on the first couple of matches. There's not a lot here in these winners bracket matches, at least the first rounds. But yeah, I kind of want to fade this Carolina team here. What do you see
Yeah,
here?
my model again pointing me in the direction of the giant underdog, which I'm not surprised by, but I understand why. I do think if I had to pick a side, I'd rather have Carolina plus 2.5 at minus 138 than the other side. It is tough to swallow though, because we know Thieves have won 18 in a row at this point. They're reeling off a lot of wins. They look great across the board, every game mode. Carolina 2-3 in the qualifiers. They get in on tiebreakers into winners bracket, I should say. But there's not a ton in their game that really gets you excited. Their hard point has been really bad, which is a bummer because throughout April and early May, they were like stringing together a lot of wins in hard point. And then lately, it's just been bad. It's just been blowouts. They squeaked out a win against Riyadh on June 5th, but before that, it was at the end of May. They got a win against Toronto, but in between then and now, it's just been like lose by 50, lose by 100, lose by 200. Not to that extent, but the hard point looks not good. Thieves, as we know, is great. Map 1 is going to be tough. Map 2 is for Ravens. They've gone to round 11 a ton lately, and their search has been pretty solid over the last couple months, so I like that my model is pointing me in, hey, Ravens Map 2 might be a good price. And honestly, that's what it's felt like for a lot of these. What we saw Thieves versus Cloud9 last week, the map 2 I think was at Cloud9 plus 300, something like that. The map 2 prices in a lot of these David versus Goliath matches are just getting way, way too big. So I think Ravens map 2 makes a lot of sense. That's probably how they cover the plus 2.5. Because yeah, their map 3 pool, pretty bad. Ravens Den Exposure Scar, I have them as 8th best, 9th best, 10th best in the league. They've seen some success on Gridlock, so maybe they'll try to work that into the map pool, but it's tough when there's 4 maps to choose from, right? One is just not going to get picked. So I think we're playing one of those maps that Ravens are not great on in map 3, and Thieves are solid across the board. So it's really tough. I think for Ravens, it's search or nothing, and then can you weasel out a win and overload, or is your hard point back to where it was 2 months ago all of a sudden? Maybe, but man, it's just a really tall ask for them. I think Ravens plus 2.5, certainly playable. If you'd rather do the map 2, I also get that. But I don't know, the Thieves' price is a little steep, but it is hard to ignore what we just saw from Ravens versus FaZe like 2 days ago. So I get where you're coming from in wanting to pick Thieves. I totally get it.
Yeah. Well, again, not a lot to pick on here in the first couple of matches here. Last match in the winners bracket here, Vegas minus 163 on the money line versus Paris, minus 1.5 plus 150, minus 138 in the hard point, minus 138 in the search, and minus 138 in the overload. And again, yeah, same theme. Not a lot to pick on here. Maybe some value on Vegas minus 1.5. Maybe you could buy that. Maybe you could get. There's not a lot here in terms of absolute value here. There's really not a lot. So honestly, I'm probably going to stay. Maybe I take a little bit of Vegas minus 1.5, but for me, this is mostly a stay away. A lot of these are priced correctly. This is the end of the year. This is priced correctly. Unless you have strong feelings on any specific team, I think not a lot here.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think the price is about right. My model hasn't totally caught up on where I think this Paris team could be, and I do think they could be better than this FaZe team. Just with the new lineup, we haven't seen them play a ton, but What we've seen lately has been solid, and these two teams played just a couple weeks ago in that crazy, went the distance map 5, round 11. FaZe were able to pull it out. That was a series Paris probably should have won, but didn't. They lost map 1 by 1 point, then won Search 6-0. Map 3 was a 3-2 win for Vegas, very close. Paris come back and get a comfortable map 4 win, and then you blow the round 11 in map 5. So I think you can make an argument like Paris were the better team but lost the series, and now they're plus 120 in the same series a couple weeks later. Look pretty solid against weak opponents a week ago, right? They had Surge and Breach, won both series, swept Surge easily, and then the Boston series they did drop the Search, but everything else was pretty clean overall. I do think the difference is map 3. Paris are solid across the board in their map set for map 3, but have yet to play Gridlock, which, interestingly enough. They just have not played it at all yet, and FaZe have and have looked pretty good. So I think FaZe have options. Paris are going to have to just roll with whatever gets picked in map 3 and hope they can pull off the upset, but I've seen enough from them over the last few weeks to think they might be back to where they were at Major 1, and that scares me, right? That scares me off of making a pick in this specific match. Futures-wise, it is interesting to think about Paris in terms of we haven't seen a ton from them. What we've seen has been a little mixed results. If they go back to LAN, could it all click and lead to a win, or at least making it there on Sunday? I think it totally could. So I know I mentioned Riyadh versus Minnesota as maybe the most intriguing round 1 game. I forgot this one existed. This one certainly is for me. And again, whoever wins this series is set up very nicely to make a run at the major. Problem is, you're going to have to go through LA Thieves in the next round. So that whole side of the bracket is pretty loaded. Curious to see how that all plays out, because we're going to have some really good matchups Friday, early Friday, and then again early Saturday throughout this winner's bracket. So excited to see how this one plays out, but it's really tough to make a call. It just really is.
Yeah, I agree with that. Futures preview. So here are the odds for each team to win. Thieves are the favorite, minus 120 to win outright, minus 300 to reach the final. Optic plus 125 to win outright, basically co-favorites, minus 275 to reach the final. FaZe plus 450, Gentlemates plus 900, Falcons 20 to 1, G2 25 to 1, Koi Toronto 33 to 1, Heretic 66 to 1, Carolina 150 to 1, Breach 250, Surge 500, and Cloud9 1,000 to 1. That's still under. That's overpriced. If you ask me, that should be a lot higher for Cloud9 there. Here's what we've got. Honestly, this is kind of one of the weirdest distributions I have for this. My model is just very like, it's one of these two. That's it. It's just like there is nothing here. Everything below. Normally, I'll randomly find some spot of value, usually around this range, but I've got nothing. My model says this is basically a 2-horse race and kind of a 1-horse race here, with Thieves at plus 120. And then for the same thing to make the final, okay, maybe Vegas has a chance here. Maybe they could do something, knock out one of those teams in the losers final. Maybe some value on Riyadh and Minnesota. But basically, my model is just kind of saying this is a 1-horse race here. What are your thoughts on this? What is your model like? What do you see here?
Yeah, really interesting. I don't think we've had another major or even minor this year where it's been like 2 co-favorites and then everyone else is past them. But it makes sense, right? Thieves are so hot right now. They won the last major. They're just on a roll. They've had some series lately where they've been a little too close for comfort maybe, but at the end of the day, they're winning a lot. And they've looked good on LAN pretty much the entire year outside of early in the season. Optic, they're the team that has not won anything yet this year, but are number 1 in the points table by quite a margin because they have just crushed it online, and they've been second every time. They've had good results at the majors and the minors, but it's because they've been second in every single one. They haven't completely dropped the ball, but they just have not been able to get over the hump and get that win. My numbers are basically Thieves and Optic are equals. If you matched them up in a best of 5 head-to-head, it would be a 50-50, and I totally buy that. I wouldn't know who to pick. I would think it would be a great series. I hope we see it again, maybe twice this weekend, maybe at Champs, maybe at the Esports World Cup, because I think these teams are solid. And again, the Optic results lately, the map fives, a little concerning, but I think you get to LAN, a lot of that could be alleviated. They've just been so good throughout the year. I would just be surprised for them to trip up this late in the season, but it's happened before, so it could happen again. I think Optic's path to get to the final is just significantly nicer than Thieves' path. First off, their opening round game, would you rather play Ravens or Breach? I think I'd rather play Breach. Yeah, I know Breach are the 6th seed and Ravens are the 8th, but we've seen a lot from Breach this year. I think Breach got the winner's bracket spot with help from that really easy schedule that they got during the qualifier periods. Congrats to them for getting the 3 out of 5 wins, but if you give Ravens that same schedule, I think Ravens might go 3-2 and flip them for the 6th seed. So yeah, opening round match, not a huge difference there though. Both are pretty weak opponents that we expect them to beat. The thing then comes right after that, right? Optic, should they win, we'll get the winner of Falcons versus G2. Again, 2 teams that I think are squarely middle of the pack teams. They're solid teams that could make some noise at the major if their stuff is up to where it could be. And I think it could be, right? But man, I'd rather play Riyadh or Minnesota than Vegas or Paris, right? If you're Thieves, that's your round 2 opponent. I do think my numbers are a little short on where Paris could be at this point. So we do see my model shows some value in Vegas to reach the major final, but I think you can maybe knock that down a little bit and give some of that percentage to Paris. And honestly, if Paris are the team I think they might be, I think you got to knock Thieves' numbers down just a touch as well. Thinking, okay, if Paris come out and beat Vegas, could they take out Thieves? I really think they could. I would guess Optic are going to be bigger favorites against Minnesota or Falcons than Thieves are going to be bigger favorites to either of those teams. But that's just a thought. Honestly, though, I'm with you. I don't see a ton of value at this major. It feels priced about right. It feels like a 2-horse race. There's a handful of other teams that could make runs, but I think their prices are about right as well. So I'm intrigued to see how this winner's bracket plays out because it is so imbalanced, in my opinion, with that top half of the bracket looking really strong. But it could lead to some interesting results further down the line. The loser's bracket matches might be crazy because of that. Yeah, curious to see how it shakes out, but I'm not seeing a ton of value overall. But that's not to say I didn't make some picks that were futures picks. So we'll see about that.
All right, let's look at those right now. So here are our picks for the major here. I've got Boston plus 2.5 minus 120 versus Optic. I've got Thieves minus 2.5 versus Carolina. And then I'm going to go with Thieves to win the major. I think you're going to take the opposite side of that bet. What do you have for this major?
Yeah, I'm rolling with those middle of the pack teams that are facing off in round 1. I think the prices are pretty fair for both. I'm not in love with them, but I'm just siding with that side of the bracket. One of Minnesota and Riyadh will win their opening round game. That will happen. And that winner will most likely play Optic should Optic get through Breach. It goes one of 2 ways from there at that point. Let's assume it's Optic versus Minnesota for a second. Right? If Minnesota beat Falcons, beat them decisively, that would be even better. But should they get out of that game, that's a solid win against a quality opponent. If you square up versus Optic and take them out again, which, again, they did that a couple weeks ago, but if Minnesota were to get through Optic at that point, maybe those concerns about Optic start to kick in of, okay, they're not in the winner's bracket final for the first time this year. They just lost to a team that is good, not great. But Minnesota, right? You rack up 2 of those wins. I don't see why they couldn't take out a Thieves or a Vegas or a Paris in the winner's bracket final at that point. On the flip side, if we get to that point where Optic take out Breach pretty easily, square up against Minnesota or Falcons, or it doesn't really matter. If Optic can steamroll Breach, which I think there's a real possibility they do, and then follow that up with another nice win over either of these teams, they're super live to win the major, right? You're in the winner's bracket final. They've been there all year. I think they're roughly equals to Thieves. I think they're still a cut above Vegas and Paris. Yeah, and I'd feel good about having them at plus 125 at that point. So really, it's just a play on that side of the bracket is going to produce someone that will go on a run. And honestly, any of these teams could make a really nice lower bracket run as well. So I think that top side of the bracket is just going to cannibalize each other, and one team will make it out of that, likely Thieves. But that bottom side of the bracket, I think, is open when you consider maybe Optic aren't where they're normally at this year, but maybe it's still good enough to get them to the final and win it. And maybe if they're not, Minnesota or Riyadh could take advantage of that for sure. So I like our plays. I think we're all over the board here. But yeah, we'll see how it shakes out. It could be a really fun major, that's for sure.
Combined model plays, not a lot here, but we do both share some value on Carolina to reach the final and completing the destiny, making it to champs, and Boston Breach to reach the final too. Again, not likely, still remote, but definitely possible. That's our combined model plays for this major. Next is going to be champs preview. That will be out by Wednesday, July 15th, because we're still several weeks away from champs at this point. Champs is that weekend, correct?
Yep, champs would start Thursday, July 16th. So we might even
Okay.
have it out well before that, but for sure it will be out by the day prior.
I suspect we will have it out sometime between July the 4th and that week. Probably somewhere around there would be my guess of where we're going to have it out. But other than that's it for us for the last major of the season. We will see you back here for champs in just a few weeks. And then obviously the Esports World Cup after that. Other than that, everybody, enjoy the last major of the season. Set your alarms. It's going to be early. And we'll see everybody in a couple weeks. See you, everybody.